camera and video?
Not necessarily. Dear colleagues, hello, hello. It's 2 minutes before we start our day 2 conference. And while you are joining in, please use the chat box to mark that you see us both and that you hear us. Me, you hear me, and if it is possible for you, please type from what part of Ukraine or not Ukraine, maybe you are abroad, you are joining in. Okay, Germany, Коломия, Черкасy region, Полтава, Дніпро, Харків, Полтава, Миколаїв, Тернопіль, Херсон, Мукачево, again Dnipro. Kiev is here, Житомир is here, Vyshgorod is not far from Kiev, Bravary is not far from Kiev, Житомир, Бердичев, Ivano-Frankivsk, and now I am not following Irpin. Irpin is, David, you know, Irpin is 4 kilometers from the place where I live. We're very close to each other. Mykolaiv, Kharkiv, Brovary, and it is 3 p.m. Kiev time. And it is day 2 of Macmillan Back to School online conference. And I'm Inna Nistaiter, and I work for Macmillan Education Ukraine. And today we have a very special speaker, whom many of you might know in person, many of you know only via online. Before I give the floor to David Spencer, 3 very short announcements. First announcement that this conference is being recorded, and in some days you will get the link to the recording. The second announcement is that you will get the certificate for today's conference. And if you attended yesterday's conference, you probably already received the certificate. And announcement number 3, which is very important, please make sure that you are in the safe place, because your safety is above all. So David, with great pleasure, I'm giving the floor and all the participants to you.
Thank you very much, Inna. It's great to be here. I'm just going to start sharing my screen. Oh, wait. Actually, I'm going to do that again. Sorry, because I did forget. Wait. Yeah. Great. Thank you very much, Inna, for the introduction. It is a real pleasure to be with you today. As Inna said, I imagine that the most important thing is that everybody is safe and secure while watching this. It's a real pleasure to be with you. And as Inna said, maybe some of you know me actually personally. Because as I'm going to show you here with my first slides, I have been to Ukraine before. I was lucky enough to go to Ukraine. My first trip was in 2012, the first time I went. I have actually been to Ukraine 3 times. I was lucky enough to go 3 times. I visited different cities. So I've been in Kiev, obviously, several times. Kharkiv, Donetsk, Odessa, and Belya Tserkov. And also I have had the honor of giving some special webinars for Ukraine in the past. And I think this is my webinar number 8. So it's a real pleasure to be with you today. I'm going to be talking about 2 different things today. My first talk will be about mixed abilities, diversity, and inclusion. And for my second session, I have been asked to give you an introduction to the latest version of Gateway, which is Gateway to the World. And Inna also is going to be telling you a little bit about that, because we have a very special version of the book, which is unique to Ukraine. So we're really excited to show that to you later. So my first talk is, as I say, about diversity, inclusion, mixed abilities. And I can already see in the chat box that you're very, very active. And that is what I love about webinars. I really would like you to help me today by participating as much as possible in the chat box. I'm going to ask you some questions today. And each time I ask you a question, the more answers in the chat box, the better. I think it's great for all of us so that you are part of this very special webinar. So I'm going to begin by explaining, here I am actually, I forgot to show you my proof of me being in Ukraine in the good old days, right? Yeah, very memorable trips. I have lots more photographs actually, lots more photographs of people in talks. And yeah, and I'm hoping that one day I'm going to come back, okay? So let's always hope from the best. Hey, hello from Liverpool. Natalia, does that mean that you're in Liverpool? You know that I'm from Liverpool, right? That is my hometown. That makes me very emotional. But yeah, I don't know, Natalia, if you're actually in Liverpool or not, but that would be amazing. So yes, you've seen my photographs. I've been in Ukraine several times, 3 times, as I've said. Let's begin the talk. What do we mean when we talk about diversity and inclusion? Well, I'm going to tell you what I mean. I think that I'm going to explain this in detail, but when we're in the classroom, we teach a class, but we also teach all of the individuals in that class. It's like doing 2 different things at the same time. And I think that when we talk about diversity and inclusion, and they are 2 words which we talk about more and more in education today, we're talking about being aware of the differences that exist between the individual students in our classes and how we can deal with this question. How can we make sure that we engage, respect, and support all of these different individuals in the classroom? And I would like to ask you for some help before I begin. What do you think are the differences between our individual students? So in any class, whether we have 10, 20, 30 students, there are always lots of differences that exist between individual students. What differences could you suggest to me now that exist between our students? Can you just put your ideas in the chat box and then I'll share my ideas. So different abilities, right? Okay. Different learning styles. That's interesting. Gadgets available is interesting. Motivation is definitely a really big issue. And I like the word there, tempers. Yeah, different tempers, kind of moods that people are in. There are lots of them, yeah. Different cultural backgrounds, very, very important, right? So in any class, we might have people from different cultural or even racial backgrounds. Likes and dislikes is a very, very, very important issue too, I think. And characters, yeah. Extroverts and introverts. Thank you very much, Tatiana. And I'm going to talk about that in specifically later in the session. Motivation, age, the speed that they work. Nadia, that is really important. And I'm going to talk about that too in this session today. Learning styles, great. Well, I'm going to share my screen, my slide with lots of ideas. And you've mentioned many of these, okay? So levels of proficiency and aptitude. So some people are just better than others at, for example, English or at maths or at certain subjects. Motivation. Many of you have mentioned the question of different levels of motivation. And some people might be motivated about learning maths, but not motivated about learning English. Each student's motivation depends according to their attitude towards the subject and also maybe towards the school. Maybe some people feel demotivated about school in general. So I think that motivation and attitude are key. Many of you have also mentioned this question of preferred learning styles, which I think is really important. Active versus passive. What I mean is that some students in my class, they contribute actively, like you are doing in the chat box today, but some of them prefer just to sort of sit back and watch, but not really be involved. So that's also a difference, I think, between students. Many of you have mentioned the question of personalities. So Lena, I think it is, if I'm reading the alphabet correctly, has just mentioned personalities. People have different personalities. And as somebody mentioned before, and I will mention it again, some are very extrovert and some are introvert. And I think that sometimes makes a difference about how and how much English students learn. Interests and hobbies. So they've got like different questions there of how, what things they're interested in. So it might be music, it might be sport, whatever it is. Cultural and linguistic background. Somebody mentioned this before, cultural differences between our students. Parental expectations and interest. And personally, as a teacher of teenagers, I think this is important because it's not only the students that we're teaching, but we also have to take into account parents. Some parents are extremely ambitious about how much English their child is learning, and some maybe are slightly less ambitious. So I think that what parents think is also important to us. Also, I think the interpersonal relationship with other classmates. So some students maybe are very popular with their classmates, some are less popular, some maybe have problems with their classmates, and this also affects the way that each individual learns in the class. And somebody mentioned the word before, temper, and my variation on that is the word mood. So how are they feeling today? That could also affect how they respond in the classroom. Maybe somebody's tired, maybe they have a particular problem. Obviously, in your case, you have like incredible problems, I imagine, with the way that students feel each day when they wake up, and that is going to affect the way they feel in your class. So all of these differences exist, I think, between our students. Now, today, what I'm talking about is a kind of balance between two different things. This quotation is from somebody very famous in the ELT world, Mario Rinvolucri. Maybe you recognize the name. He said in this article, "We do not teach a group, but 30 separate people. Because of this, the problem of mixed abilities in the same room seems absolutely natural, and it is the idea of teaching a unitary lesson that seems odd." Now, I like this quotation, but I don't agree with it 100%. But I agree with this idea that we are teaching 30 individuals at the same time. And that is kind of the problem, right? Because all of our students are on a different planet. They're kind of feeling different things. They're thinking different things. I have a funny picture here from a comic from England from 1960, 1970. This kind of gives an idea of how every student is just doing their own thing. They're not necessarily listening to the teacher. Everybody is in their own world. Now, of course, that's very difficult to deal with in the classroom because if there are 20 students and only one teacher, I created this slide. This is my solution to the problem of teaching lots of different individuals in the class. What I try to do is divide myself. Look, here's 2 Daves, 3 Daves, 4 Daves, 5 Daves. Maybe teaching would be easier if teachers, we could divide ourselves into 20 different teachers and have one different teacher for one different student. Now, I think you'll agree with me that this is unfortunately impossible, right? We can't do this. And that kind of makes me think that the problem of different personalities, I think the real challenge of being a teacher of teenagers or of primary school teachers or of adults is that we are doing two things at the same time. We are teaching, like Mario Vrumvalucri said, we are teaching maybe 25, 30 different personalities, but they do all form one group. And I think part of education is that students realize that maybe in their homes, they are the king or the queen of their houses. But in the classroom, they are one of many people. Do you ever have the situation where you have one student who expects you to answer every single question they have all the time? And you have to explain, I am not only here to answer your questions, I have to answer questions from 25 different people. And I think part of education is helping young people realize that they are, yes, they are very special, but that also at the same time, the whole class is special and that you are there for the whole class. And we're going to try to balance both things, but that sometimes they have to be patient, they have to wait, and they have to listen to you. And I think some students find that very difficult to realize because maybe at home they are pampered, yeah, that they are like the special one in their homes, but everybody is special in my class. So everybody also sometimes has to wait. So it's part of the life of the classroom that we have this mixture of a whole class, but lots of individuals in the class. Now, what I'm going to try and suggest today is ways that we as teachers can make life easier for ourselves and for our students. So little tricks or big tricks to help us to deal with the individuals as well as the whole class. Now, my step number one to this question is we could say that it's a problem, but my idea is that we need to love the problem. In other words, think for a second. I think somebody said this before about personalities. Imagine a class with 25 students and every student was the same. Every student had the same interests, the same personality. They were all exactly the same. I think actually as a teacher, I would find that quite boring. I like the variety in my classroom. I like having some students who are quiet and some students who are loud, some who are funny, some who are serious, some who are maybe really motivated in English, but some who are not, and I'm going to try to motivate them. So I think the first thing is to be aware that having different students in the classroom is a good thing. I've shown this slide in many webinars that I've done in the last year, so maybe some of you already know the answers. But otherwise, can you try and guess what are the words that begin with R, A, and C on this slide? It is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to R, A, and C those differences. What do you think those three words are? In the chat box, can you give me some guesses? Any guess will be good. Oh, that's very good. That's Sergey. Recognize, accept, react, act, correct. Those are nice words as well. Recognize, accept, respect is a good word too. It's not correct, those differences, actually. No, it's not correct. So the word that's most difficult, I think, is the C word, but maybe in some ways it's the most important word that I'm going to say today. It's not cope. That's a good guess, Ala, but it's not. Connect, challenge, no. It's a very, very positive word. It's something that you do when you have a party. What do you do when you have a party? Could be cheer. That's a good answer. Celebrate, Allah. That is exactly the word. Okay. So the original quotation, which was from a black writer from the United States, it is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. And I think that's a really nice way of putting it, right? We are different. And that's okay. It's okay that everybody is different. Everybody in my classroom is unique. So we should recognize that they are unique. We should accept that they are unique. and we should celebrate it. It's good. It's good that we're all different. It's good that we all have something unique to offer. That's what life is all about, right? And I think that this quotation for me is a very important quotation to think about life, but also a very important quotation to think about our classroom. Let's recognize the differences between our students. Let's accept them, and let's celebrate them. So how can we celebrate them? Well, when I write my books, I try and celebrate this difference by showing the richness and diversity of the world through our texts. So I want to have texts which will interest all of our students, also get them to be curious about the world. The title of the new edition of Gateway is Gateway to the World. The idea is that we are opening our students' horizons to the world in general. And part of that, for example, are these 2 pages here, which are learning about different cultures. So, for example, we have this text which is about traveling, why traveling is good, why meeting new people, meeting new people with different cultural backgrounds is really positive, because we can basically learn about the world, learn about different ways of thinking. And the reason I think why I love teaching teenagers still, after teaching for 36, 37 years, is because we are helping students to learn about English, but we're also helping them to step outside of the classroom, step outside of school, and learn about the world which is outside. And I think we need to stress, how rich our world is with all of the differences that I've just mentioned now. Now, we've got this idea of learning about different cultures. Have you ever heard this expression before? Okay, this idea of you have to see it to be it. This is a very popular concept, for example, in the United Kingdom, where, for example, particularly maybe people from different backgrounds, different racial backgrounds, maybe they read a novel, they read a book, but there are no characters who are from their particular country or their particular cultural background. Now, when I started writing books, I wrote my first book 30 years ago. It was very difficult to find good texts about, for example, women examples of doing great things like art. This is a great book, by the way. If you're interested in art, this is a bestseller from the United Kingdom, The Story of Art Without Men, right? So when we think of famous painters, we always think of, Picasso, Dali, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, but we forget that, of course, there have been many, many, many famous women artists that, for example, I particularly didn't necessarily know about. Black heroes, people from different cultures who are examples who we can learn from. So in my books now, of course, I always try to have texts where people can see that there are role models for whoever you are. In this case, we've got some really interesting texts about women who've traveled around the world. Ukrainians, definitely, Svetlana, and you're going to see some very interesting material later on in the break between my 2 talks. So the whole idea here of 2 women who traveled around the world, one of them who traveled around the world in 1894, and another who was the youngest person to travel to every single country in the world. And that was an American lady called Lexi Alford. So in other words, giving texts which are texts that our students can aspire to, things that they can think about, things that they can realize that everybody has great potential. So I think that this is like a key thing. One of the new elements, because my second talk today, I'll be talking about Gateway to the World. One of the new elements that we have in Gateway to the World following Gateway 2nd edition is videos, which are in the middle of each unit, which are from obviously one of the most important British broadcasting companies. And we've got some really nice videos, which I think bring different topics to life. I'm going to share one of them with you now, which is giving our students the idea that, of course, everybody can decide the particular type of career that they want to follow, regardless of their sex or their background. And this is a very poetic video, I think. There's not much speaking, but it's a very beautiful video. I'm going to show it to you, and afterwards in the chat box, you can tell me what you think of this video. Let's watch it.
There's been a lot of pressure in my life to go back to school, get a different job, do something that is safer for me as a female. There are some men that just, they don't want to see you there. It's not a woman's place to be on a lobster boat. And it's always a shock to see that people don't see it as normal. I'm just a girl that works in a male industry. That pressure only makes me want to do what I'm doing more. I can't see myself not on a boat at this point. The one thing about being out there is that it never, ever looks the same. There's moments where you see these incredible sunrises and sunsets. There's times when the ocean will turn white, the sky is white, and it all kind of blurs together. And you see the moon rises, you see the stars. You can leave all your problems at the dock, and you know that all you have to go do is this job.
Okay, I hope you could all hear and see that video properly. It's a very calm video. I think it's visually very beautiful. The music is very nice. But as somebody has just said here, an example of a job which is not traditionally female. I think this video is very beautiful, but is also very, very powerful. It's very powerful. She is very clearly stating that this is what she wants to do. This is her life. Whatever people think about it, she wants to do this job, and she is not willing to change her desires because of what other people expect. And yeah, I'm enjoying the comments that you're writing there. It's very, she loves seeing the ocean. It never looks the same. And yes, as Victoria has said there, a happy person. She's happy doing what she wants to do. And I think that for our teenage students, it's nice to have these models where you kind of think, when you're a teenager, you might have dreams, and then you think, well, I can't achieve my dreams because people say this and people say that. And I think this video is what I call quietly powerful. It's quietly powerful. It's not making a big statement. It's simply saying, this is what I want to do. and this is what I'm going to do. I think that message actually is as important for our male students too, that they decide what they think they want to do, and men can also break different stereotypes. So I think it's a video that is very powerful in its way. And when we talk about inclusion, diversity, then it's allowing different people to choose different things that they want to do in life. Yes, Sophia, that's a very good comment. Exactly. So I particularly like this video. So, right, we're talking about inclusion and diversity. And I've already said that for me, the difficult part, the magic, I suppose, of being a teacher is that we are teaching one whole class, but also we are teaching all of the individuals in that class. So we're doing two things at the same time. And I think that to be a good teacher, what we need to do is to try and find out what we can about the individuals in our class. Now, I'm going to share with you, maybe it's actually my favorite activity of all time. And if you follow my Facebook page, you will know that I have shared this activity many, many times. But it's a great activity for you to do now if you are about to begin a new course with new students in your classroom. My favorite activity, okay, for the first week or 2 weeks of class is t-shirts. Now, how many t-shirts do you think your teenage students have? Like 1, 5, 10? How many t-shirts? A rough calculation. How many t-shirts do you think your students have? 12, 15, a lot, up to 10, 7, 10. All students tend to have t-shirts. We all have t-shirts, right? And of course, what I realized a long time ago is that t-shirts tell stories about us. There are millions of t-shirts in the world, but we all choose to buy certain t-shirts. Why? Because they kind of reflect our interests, our hobbies, the things that we are interested in. So at the beginning of every school year, I give a demonstration first, and I'm going to do it back to front today. But usually I bring in 3 t-shirts, and I show my students 3 t-shirts. In fact, I'm going to show you my 3 t-shirts now. Okay, these are my 3 t-shirts. And I show them to the class, and I say, okay, why do you think these t-shirts are special to me? Why are they important and significant to me? Okay, and they guess in pairs, in small groups. Can anybody guess, why is my Spider-Man t-shirt special to me? Does anybody know? Why do you think I like my Spider-Man t-shirt? A present from my kid, that's an interesting one. They show your inner world. Karina, you are actually probably exactly correct. I like comics. Yeah, I'm a fan of comics. You are actually correct. Ala, I would like to think that I'm brave, but maybe I'm not very brave. I will admit that in fact, I'm a bit of a chicken. Okay, I'm not very brave, but I am a fan. So I'm a fan of of Spider-Man, and I'm a fan of comics. I also like the art of comics. So, and I think I began to like reading because I liked reading comics. And I think I began to like art because I started reading comics. So for me, Spider-Man was very important in my development. I began to read. I kind of identified with parts of Spider-Man's character. The second t-shirt is difficult to read, okay? But it says Penny Lane and Strawberry Field. And I don't know does anybody know where is Penny Lane and where is Strawberry Field? Does anybody know? The Beatles, yes. Thank you, Anastasia. The Beatles. And the Beatles, of course, are from... Where are the Beatles from? Liverpool. Thank you, Anastasia. Yes, Olena. Very good. Yeah, the Beatles. And so, for example, this t-shirt is very special to me because this is where I grew up. My school was very close to Penny Lane, and I grew up close to there. My mum, who is 93, she lives next to Strawberry Field. So the Beatles are part of my childhood. Liverpool is part of my childhood. And so it's very special to me. So this t-shirt is important to me. Right, now this is interesting. Marina, you say the third one is amazing. Any ideas? Why is the third t-shirt significant to me? Does anybody have any ideas? Why do you think I have shown you that I like gardening? That's a good idea, Anastasia. Hawaiian relax. Yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. I like traveling. It's bright. Holiday shirt, favorite vacation. Right, these are all really good ideas. I didn't get married in Hawaii. Actually, do you know what, Tatiana? My wedding anniversary was yesterday, and I have been married for 36 years, and we celebrated in the place where we got married. So this shirt, I'm going to tell you now that, in fact, I do not really like this shirt. I have never worn this shirt except for one occasion. Okay, one occasion. And I'm going to explain it to you at the end of this talk. So you have to stay to the end of the talk to find out why this t-shirt is special to me. Okay, now I do this as an example with my students. I show 3 shirts and then I say to them, I want you to bring in 3 shirts in the next week, and you're going to explain to the class why they are important to you. Now you discover amazing things about your students, okay? You discover lots of amazing things. I discovered that this student here, he likes heavy metal music, which is quite typical, but he also plays heavy metal guitar. So that was a really interesting thing to discover. This young lady in the middle showed me a shirt which was to do with a social awareness organization about drinking and driving, which I thought was really interesting. It was something which was important to her. And the third student on the end of the slide, he brought this shirt, which is from a summer camp. He went to a summer camp in the holidays, and his friends signed and gave messages on his shirts. You find all sorts of amazing information about your students. It's a nice activity because you can hide behind your t-shirt. Yeah, so if a student is shy, they hide behind the t-shirt, but they explain. I ask the rest of the class to listen and to think of one question that they would like to ask to the question who is question to the person who is explaining the t-shirts. So for me, this is one of the this is one of my favorite activities at the beginning of the school year. It takes a few weeks because I ask, for example, 4 or 5 people each day to explain their t-shirts. You can't do it in one day. You need to take a few days to do it. But for me, it is time really well spent because you discover some amazing information about your students. And I think it's important that you are an example first, because you are breaking the ice, you are giving a model, and you are explaining how you want them to do the activity afterwards. Obviously, the students will choose the t-shirts that they feel happy about explaining. If they don't feel comfortable, they should not bring in that particular t-shirt, okay? So by doing this activity at the beginning of the year, I'm finding out information about my students that will be useful for me throughout the year to kind of get to know my students better. Now, I think that one of the important things in a class of 20-25 adolescents is making sure that everybody has the freedom to speak. Everybody has the confidence to speak. And I think that this is something that I realized a while ago, that sometimes there are some very quiet students in our classes. And I think we need to respect those quiet students. I don't know if any of you have seen this TED Talk, but I really recommend you to watch it after this session or in the next few weeks. The Power of Introverts by Susan Cain. Susan Cain has written 2 great books about quiet people. She makes the argument that many people today in the world, the louder they are, the more attention we pay to them. But quiet people have often really great ideas and are sometimes just a little bit quiet about sharing those ideas. And I think, and I'm going to make a terrible, terrible, terrible generalization now, but in your classes, who tends to dominate in your classes, the boys or the girls? This is a big generalization, okay? But I'm just going to see what you say. Are the boys or the girls louder? The girls are louder, boys are louder, girls, boys, girls, boys, it depends. Okay, well, that's good. Right. I'm not sure what the majority is saying. It's kind of 50-50, right? What Susan Cain says in her book is that it's often the girls, for example, who are shyer about giving their opinions, expressing their opinions when there are boys in the class. But whether they're boys or the girls, it's the same point. I think it's really important that we try and encourage everybody to be able to speak in the classroom. Now, we have in Gateway to the World, I will explain this later as well, but we have collaborative projects. And in these collaborative projects, we try and develop certain skills. One of those skills is working collaboratively on the project. And if you look at this collaboration box here, it says, when you work in a team, it's essential to listen to everyone and let everybody contribute. Sometimes one or two people can dominate in a group, but the best teams have a balance between everybody, including the quiet members of the team. And I think this is really important. When we get our students to work in groups, some students, whether they're boys or they're girls, it makes no difference. Some students tend to dominate and some students become very, very passive and very, very quiet. And what I'm trying to do in this case is encourage everybody to have a go and to encourage maybe the more more expressive students to encourage the quieter students to get involved. And we're also teaching language to do this. So with useful language, that's a good idea. But what do you think, Sarah? Let's listen to Oscar, who hasn't spoken yet. It's your turn to speak next. In other words, encouraging students really to involve everybody in the group. And I think if we're talking about inclusion and diversity, this idea of getting students to help one another to get everybody involved, I think is really, really important and really useful. In my second session today, I'll be talking about collaborative projects and how they can also help with mixed abilities. But I think this is going to be really important, this idea of encouraging everybody in the group to collaborate and to say their opinion. Okay, I hope you're all still with me. And I'm going to continue with the question of, I've just mentioned this word, mixed abilities. I think project work is a great way to deal with mixed abilities because everybody can bring something to the table, as we say in English. So some students might be very good at presenting the project. Some students might be very good at doing the research. Some students might be very good at doing the writing part of the project. So in other words, I think mixed abilities is a great way of each student showing their own ability. Maybe somebody is really good at doing artwork and they can do a beautiful, some kind of illustration for the project. But basically, everybody is bringing their particular strength to the group. Now, I always say, because if you look at books and if you watch talks, often people talk about mixed ability in singular, but I always call it mixed abilities. I don't know if anybody can guess why I call it mixed abilities. But the reason is, basically, is that I do not really believe that some students are good at English and some students are bad at English. I think some students are very good, for example, at some parts of English, like maybe speaking and writing, but maybe many of those students are not so good possibly at grammar. Or you have some students are very good at grammar, but they're not very good at speaking. So in my opinion, it's not that students are good or bad at English. I think each student has different strengths in English. They might be better at some things than at others. You know, occasionally you find a student who's good at everything, and occasionally you find a student who's not very strong at everything. But in my experience, somebody always have something that they can do quite well in English, and something maybe that they do less well. Yeah. So I think that this, in the classroom, the real question for me often becomes a thing called fast finishers. Do you ever talk about fast finishers in your class? You know, we often have this expression, and in the classroom, we often say something like this, right? Can we all stop now, please? It doesn't matter if you haven't finished, okay? Sometimes I say this. In fact, maybe quite often I say this, but I wonder, is it true that it doesn't matter if you haven't finished? Sorry. I'm jumping. Sorry. I pressed the wrong button there. Is it really true that it doesn't matter if you haven't finished? I personally think that if every time you do an activity, you stop when the best students have finished, then that's a bad thing, because the less strong students are finishing early. They never get to the end of an activity. So I think that it's important that everybody kind of does finish the main activity. Yeah, as Alexandra has said, yeah, for those who haven't finished, it matters. I agree. So I think that one of the keys to teaching mixed abilities is to have activities ready for the student who is working slower. So this is a page from Gateway to the World A2. It's a vocabulary page. And on the page, we've got different activities. But you'll notice that at the end of the page, we have this arrow which says reach higher. Now, the idea of this activity is that if you have a student who finishes, for example, exercise 4 very quickly, they've done it well, they have nothing to do, they start getting bored, they start to distract their student. So what we have in Gateway to the World in many pages is this arrow which says reach higher. And it takes you to a page at the back of the book. This is the page 146. And we have an activity. For those students who finished fast, we have an activity to keep them busy doing something interesting. In this case, if you can see that on the screen, it's doing an alphabet of food where you have to write A for apple, B for broccoli, in this case, could be banana, C for carrot. Could somebody give me a type of fruit, a type of food which begins with the letter D? Any ideas? D for donuts, right? Dips, that's nice as well. Yeah, donuts. Dragon fruit. Oh, dumplings. That is a good idea. Sergey, that was a very nice idea. Dumplings, dairy products. Okay, E. Dill, that's nice too. E. Egg, of course. Egg is the eggplant is nice too. Yeah, those are the two obvious ones, right? Now, this is a nice activity. In fact, I love doing this activity in general as a great vocabulary revision activity. But it's a really nice activity to use with your students. But basically, what I'm suggesting here is that this is an activity that will keep your fast finishers busy, motivated, engaged, interested, so that they're not getting bored. So on many pages of Gateway to the World, we have the same idea. I particularly think that reading is one of the biggest areas that is problematic, because some students finish reading really quickly. They've answered all the questions, they've got everything right, but they are bored. So at the end of the reading page, we have again, if you look at the bottom of the screen, we have the reach higher arrow, and that takes them to the back of the book. And here we have an extra comprehension task to keep our students busy. Okay, so we've got something again for them to do. Now, some people I know think that it's not fair again if some of the students, the fast finishers, are doing this exercise, but not the other students. But if you like, what you can do is that you can give this exercise for the whole of the class for homework. So everybody is doing more reading comprehension. So you can decide it could be exclusively for fast finishers, or you could give it to everybody to do afterwards. So the idea of the activity is that it is very flexible. Another thing that you can do for fast finishers, which I think is really useful, and I explained this in an international webinar quite recently, when you read this text, at the end of the text, if somebody has finished and they don't have anything to do, get them to Google the people, the places, the events in the text. In this case, we mention a photographer called Greg Siegel. And Greg Siegel has an amazing project of taking photographs of students from around the world and surrounding them with the food that they eat in 1 week. So if you finish the activity, if some students finish the reading activity first, you can get them then to Google this man, find out some of his photos, find out some of what he did. That's going to keep those students busy, interested, motivated, and they can give feedback to the rest of the class. Yes, Anastasia, they are great photographs and they are beautiful. They're visually beautiful and of course fascinating, right? Finding out the difference between what somebody eats maybe in Thailand, Indonesia, Ukraine, the United States, Africa. By the way, one interesting thing about this text is that it explains that 5 African countries are amongst the top countries for a healthy diet, which is interesting, right? So obviously, for example, maybe the United States, the United Kingdom, Mexico are maybe not the healthiest diets in the world. So there's lots to talk about, lots to look at, lots to think about. And that's one way, again, of keeping our fast finishers busy, involved, and motivated. Now, I've got a few other games that I use in my classroom to keep fast finishers busy. Whatever activity you're doing, there are things that we can do in our classroom to keep the fast finishers busy. This is one of my favorite activities. I call it the word chain. We go from rose to rise, rise to rice, rice to nice. Can you tell me in the chat box, what is happening each time? How many words are changing from one word to the next? One letter. Thank you, Sophia. One letter is changing. Is it always the first letter, for example? No, it isn't, Anastasia. So that's important. You can change any letter at any moment, okay? You change each time one letter, whichever letter, Svetlana. Yes, a random letter. So, for example, from nice, what would be a good word to follow nice? Mice. Thank you, Svetlana. We could go from mice, or we could go to dice. That's another nice one, yeah. Lice we could go to, yeah. Okay, you get the idea then. You could change one letter each time. So for example, I put this on one corner of my blackboard. And when I finish an activity, I tell my students, okay, if you finish the reading, if you finish the writing, if you finish this activity and you don't have anything to do, I want you to continue this list. How long does this activity last? Well, it lasts forever, right? Because you can go on for as long as possible. You keep on thinking of as many words as possible. You can think of 10 words, 15 words, 20 words. You just keep on continuing one letter at a time. Any of the 4 letters you can change one at a time. It's a great motivating activity for students who have finished doing the core activity. Okay, I hope that's clear. Here's another activity. This activity, I put this on the board, 4 different circles, and I tell my students to write as many words as possible and this is important, you always begin in the middle, and then you go to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. So you're making 4-letter words, and all of the 4-letter words have to begin with the letter B or W. So for example, one bark. Thank you, Katerina. You're very fast. Bark, bird, exactly. Any more that you can see? There are actually lots and lots and lots of words here. Remember, it's all brown, no, because there are only 4 letters, right? Ball, yes. Walk, yes. Wool, yes. Word, yes. Exactly. So again, I write this on the board, and then when a student finishes fast, I tell them to start doing this, okay? Very simple activity. You just have to make it clear that you always begin in the middle, which means every word begins with B and W, B or W, right? So kind would not be possible, no, because you always have to begin in the middle, yeah? And one last activity, which I'm sure you all know, we used to play this as children in England. How many words can you make with the letters in encyclopedia? So you take any letters, you can't double any letters, you can't add any letters, but for example, from encyclopedia, we could make the word pen, we could make the word pan, cycle. Thank you, Katerina, again. Yeah, we could make circle would be good. Yeah, circle would be great. Pad would be perfect. Panda, nice. Yeah, exactly. So you get the idea. You would simply, in the corner of your blackboard, write the word encyclopedia and then get them to do this. And I think I can tell from the chat box, I think, that you're enjoying doing this. And I think your students will enjoy doing it too. By the way, these activities also make great warmers at the beginning of the class. Perfect. Okay. Now, another thing that we can do for mixed abilities is have exercises or worksheets at different levels. You could prepare these, you could photocopy them, you could scan them. In Gateway to the World, the workbook, all of the activities in the workbook have a star system. So 1 means that the activity is easier, and 3 means that it is more difficult. So that is a nice way just of getting students to realize the difference between the level of activities. In Gateway to the World, we also have tests at 2 different levels. So that is something that you might want to play with. And then we have the idea, which I think is really important, we are talking more and more about social and emotional learning. And I think particularly, obviously, your students are in particular need of help for social and emotional learning, feeling better about themselves, feeling more positive, getting them to develop empathy as well, helping each other. And in Gateway to the World, we do this, getting students to think about thinking about others. Okay. Thank you, Irina, and sorry that you have to leave now. Thank you for coming. So in this section here, making friends, getting students to help people who feel lonely, people who feel maybe less good about themselves. And I will explain in my second talk after the break today. I'm going to explain more about how in Gateway to the World we develop this idea of social and emotional learning and helping students to think about others, so that when we are in the classroom and maybe there is somebody who's finding something more difficult, the other students can empathize and maybe help that student. And lastly, before we have our break, I mentioned flipped classroom videos. I think I mentioned this before. And in Gateway 2nd edition, we have flipped classroom videos. These are a great way of helping students to learn outside the classroom. So, for example, any student who didn't maybe understand your grammar explanation, they can watch the video afterwards, and they can watch it as many times as necessary and find out more about the grammar point. I think all students learn grammar at different speeds. And I think grammar is a good example of this, that some students get the grammar immediately and some take a lot longer. Now, I know that a lot of students have watched my grammar videos. They often imitate me by holding their hands like this, right? I thought that I would finish this first session. By the way, yes, it's not a break for you, okay? It's not a break for you. It's only a break for me. So for 15 minutes, Ina will be explaining some interesting things to you about Gateway to the World. And then I'll be back after a quarter of an hour with my own session. Now, I showed you before an amazing Hawaiian shirt, correct? And I didn't explain why it was significant to me. It was significant to me because I wore a similar Hawaiian shirt in this video now that you're going to watch. I hope you enjoy watching the video. Let's watch it, and you tell me after the video what grammar was I teaching, okay? Let's watch the video. Hi everyone, welcome to this Grammar with Dave video. You know, personally, I don't have any regrets about the past. But lots of people do, you know, as they get older. I read somewhere that these are the 4 most typical regrets that people have about their past. Number 1 is, I wish I'd travelled more and seen the world. Number 2 is, if only I hadn't taken everything so seriously all the time. And number 3, I'd rather not have spent so much time working. I'd sooner have spent more time with my family and friends. And finally, number 4 is, I should have believed in myself more and had more confidence in my own abilities. Let's look at those 4 sentences again. We know that each of these sentences expresses a regret about the past. We can use I wish and if only with the past perfect. We use I'd rather or I'd sooner with have and the past participle. If we're talking about something that we did and now regret having done it, we say I'd rather not have with the past participle. And finally, we can also use should or shouldn't have with the past participle to talk about past regrets. Well, as I said before, personally, I don't have any regrets about my past. I've travelled all around the world and seen some amazing places. I've spent a lot of time with my family and friends. I try not to take things too seriously, and you know, generally, I do believe in myself and my abilities. Okay, I have a confession. I'm going to be totally honest with you. There is something in the past that I regret. I wish I hadn't chosen to wear this shirt to make my video today. I'm really sorry about that. I don't know what I was thinking. But thanks for watching anyway. Bye! Okay, so you can see, yeah, that was the joke at the end of my video, that I wouldn't usually wear that shirt. Actually, it's true. When I look at it now, it doesn't look too bad, right? It doesn't look too bad. Maybe I should start wearing Hawaiian shirts. Maybe at least on holiday. Not maybe when I'm making videos, but for the holidays, yes. Okay. I'm glad you seem to like watching that. That was obviously from a high level, okay? That was from I think it was from the B2 plus. And as you said, it was third conditionals, unreal conditionals, and past regrets. But the videos are designed specially so that you can use them in the classroom if you like, but also they're very good for mixed abilities, and students can watch them again later, and they can watch them as many times as they need to so that they are at the same speed as other students in the classroom. Okay, this is the end of my first talk. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and Ina, you're going to take over, yeah, for a quarter of an hour, and then I'm straight back.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm taking over, really, and my talk will be a mixture of English and Ukrainian. I'm starting sharing my screen straight away. Sorry, just a second. I have the same problem as all. Now that's it. Okay, my talk is about Gateway to Ukraine. На самому початку нашої конференції Девід сказав, що дійсно Gateway to the World – це курс унікально створений для України. І я хотіла б трошечки з вами поспілкуватися ось з якого приводу. Коли ми говоримо про українознавчий компонент нашої програми, яку ми зобов'язані виконати, традиційно в переважній більшості підручників, посібників, якими ми користуємося, традиційний підхід пропонується вчителю і учням-підліткам. А саме, є певний якийсь текст для читання, він містить певну інформацію, і цей зміст у текстах дуже часто є стереотипним. І знов-таки традиційно, що ми з цим робимо? Ми читаємо, ми відповідаємо на запитання, іноді ми просимо наших учнів зробити переказ, і, звичайно, ми пропонуємо говоріння. Що запропонував Gateway to the World? Перш ніж я це покажу, бо це дійсно, ну, я не побоюсь цього слова, це революційний підхід до українознавчого компоненту. Перш ніж я покажу, в чому тут є революційність, я прошу вас у чаті написати зазвичай, коли ми бачимо ось ці компоненти нашої програми: географічне положення, загальні відомості про Україну, Київ – столиця України, великі міста, моє рідне місто. Що ми сподіваємося побачити у підручнику з цього приводу? Reading text, Ukrainian cuisine, example text, model text, some reading material, modern photos, true facts about our country, maybe some interview, but mostly історичні факти, якісь дати. Так, що зробив Gateway to the World? Він цей курс підійшов нестандартно до кожної нашої програмової теми. І я хочу дати вам відчути ось цей Gateway to Ukraine, to the world of Ukraine. Візьмемо ось цю сферу спілкування. Знову секунду, я повернуся назад. General information about Ukraine, Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, big cities, and my hometown. Це приклад з першого рівня Gateway to the Road. Так називається юніт, він 11-й, цей тематичний розділ Gateway to Ukraine. І це повноцінний розділ, це не один якийсь урок або якийсь один текст, але він присвячений саме ось цій частині нашої програми. І, наприклад, пропонуються ось такі завдання. Compare Odessa and Plymouth. Write similarities and differences. Або учні слухають подкаст, якщо ми говоримо про загальні відомості про Україну, учні слухають подкаст і виконують matching activity. І слухати ми його зараз, звичайно, не будемо, але я покажу вам аудіоскрипт. Я вірю, що ви впізнали ці geographical features of our country. Ми бачимо тут Daffodil Valley, ми бачимо тут Mr. Canyon, ми бачимо тут Siniver Lake, ми бачимо тут Олешки Sands. Чесно кажучи, я не спостерігала таких деталей і такого розмаїття в інших ресурсах. Коли ми відкриваємо такий же самий розділ, але в робочому зошиті, він не дублює того, що було в підручнику, і з'являються міста великі і не дуже великі в нашій країні, яким, на превеликий жаль, в інших курсах не приділяється увагу. І ми бачимо, що тут є і Чернівці, і ось My Hometown, тут текст, основа для того, щоб далі учні розповідали про своє рідне місто, це місто Ворохта. Ідемо у другий рівень, Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine, major landmarks, і так у вигляді онлайн такого туристичного путівника Golden Gate, Kyiv Founders Monument, Motherland Monument, яка вже перейменовано, звичайно, і тут вже робота вчителя, на щастя або на жаль, але події відбуваються швидше, ніж виходять підручники. В робочому зошиті, наприклад, цього ж самого рівня, коли ми говоримо про geographical features and general information, вони пишуть туристичний путівник, але зразком до цього туристичного путівника є путівник по Єнічеськ Лейк. У третьому рівні та ж сама тема, а ми знаємо і пам'ятаємо, що ці теми так чи інакше вони повторюються з класу у клас. Та ж сама тема представлена у формі exciting film and locations. І, наприклад, коли я читала цей невеличкий текст, а це формат website advertisement, я була приємно здивована, що, виявляється, є ціла низка відомих фільмів, які знімалися в Україні, але не українськими, а британськими або американськими режисерами. У четвертому рівні знов-таки та ж сама тема, але через Beautiful Historical Ukraine. І голосування, яке інформацію взято з реального голосування, і тут не тільки пам'ятні місця міста Києва, але тут і є, звичайно, Києво-Печерська лавра, але тут і Кам'янець-Подільський, тут і Хортиця Айленд, тут і Хотин Фортрес, тут і Мерхелева Рідж. Наступна тема з нашої програми Holidays and Traditions and Food, Traditional Ukrainian Cuisine. Звичайно, ми всі знаємо, яка у нас традиційна кухня, але я хотіла б показати вам, яким чином автор поєднав ці дві теми, зробив їх органічно поєднаними і не дуже стереотипно традиційними, хоча починається в першому рівні саме з традиційних різдвяних страв і святкування Різдва, як ми можемо побачити. Формат різний, тобто тут і подкасти, тут і діалоги, які ми слухаємо, тут і завдання на усне мовлення. Але далі на уроках, які присвячені розвитку усного мовлення, developing speaking, вже ми переходимо і міксуємо традиційні українські страви з великодніми святами і розширюємо. Тобто у нас серед наших традиційних страв є не тільки різдвяні страви, а є ще інші. І фіналом, я думаю, ви здогадаєтесь, що на уроках письма учні, спираючись на зразок, вони пишуть рецепт традиційної української страви. Коли ми переходимо у другий рівень, знов-таки у нас є така тема традиції святкування, державні свята, традиційні свята. І, чесно кажучи, зазвичай, коли ми говоримо про наші традиційні свята або державні свята, ми згадуємо, поправте мене, якщо я помиляюся, і в інших підручниках є і інші свята, але ми зазвичай говоримо про Різдво, Великдень, Новий рік, День Незалежності. Ось такі 4 свята, які завжди є, і ми про них говоримо і ними обмежуємося. Більше того, коли ми говоримо, наприклад, про День Незалежності України, чомусь перше, про що є думка, це святкування Дня Незалежності України в центрі міста Києва. Але ж День Незалежності, він святкується в кожному місті, в кожному містечку. І ось як зразок, наприклад, тут Independence Day Celebrations in Lviv. А далі у робочому зошиті ми говоримо і про інші державні і традиційні свята, а саме День Конституції, День захисника вітчизни. Це, якщо ми говоримо про державні свята, або про свято Івана Купала, яке ми також традиційно святкуємо, і День Святого Валентина, який не є традиційно українським святом, але все одно ми його святкуємо по-особливому в нашій країні. І ми слухаємо, знов-таки, це все відбувається у формі подкасту. Ми слухаємо подкасти, далі виконуємо певні завдання до цього piece of listening. Коли ми переходимо у третій рівень, та ж сама тема про традиції, про святкування, про якісь національні специфічні традиції, то тут є дуже незвичний і дуже практичний підхід до цієї теми. А саме, учням пропонується послухати діалог, в якому учні відповідного віку обговорюють план розваг для групи учнів з Ірландії, які мають приїхати до них до школи в Україну. Вони слухають, вони обговорюють різні варіанти. І тут ось в цей діалог якраз і вплетені всі наші традиційні українські розваги і реалії, такі як вишиванка, такі як писанки, такі як народні пісні, народні інструменти. І фіналом такого уроку є, коли учням пропонується зробити role-play activity, у них є варіації, і тут, звичайно, вчитель не обов'язково організовувати тур weekend trip for Irish students who visit your school. Не обов'язково їхати виключно у Київ та Львів, які пропонуються в підручнику. Ви можете запропонувати будь-яке інше місце, але перед цим у учнів вже є такий framework of speaking activity. В робочому зошиті відповідний урок – це підбір подарунка для подружки або друга, який або яка є українцем, українкою і зараз перебуває не в Україні, а, наприклад, у Великій Британії. І вони хочуть влаштувати якесь дуже специфічне святкування, дуже таке, яке б нагадало, і показало, що ми не забуваємо свою країну і свою рідну землю. Ідемо далі. Ще одна традиційна тема – спорт і спортсмени. Я знову попрошу вас скористатися чатом і перші 4 імені, які спадають вам на думку, коли ми говоримо про sports in Ukraine. Кличко, Усік, Бубка, Світоліна, Шевченка, Усік. Яна Клочкова. Я з вами повністю згодна. Дійсно, коли ми вимовляємо famous sportsman of Ukraine or famous Ukrainian sportsman, перші 3 прізвища, які видає будь-яка людина, вчитель, учень, люди, які не мають стосунку до освіти або до спорту, перші 3 прізвища, які одразу видаються, це Андрій Шевченка, Віталій Кличко і Сергій Бубка. Якщо люди, яких ми запитуємо, вони більш-менш цікавляться спортивними подіями, звичайно, вони згадають Яну Кличкову, Лілію Подкопаєву і так далі. Але у підручниках, за якими ми навчаємо наших учнів, більше ні про кого і немає згадки, і передбачається, що або учні самі про це знають і можуть самостійно знайти інформацію, або просто це не справа предмету, наприклад, англійська мова. То ось тут автори зробили наступне, і ті прізвища, які зараз ви писали у чаті, вони якраз з'являються на сторінках 2-го рівня, де частина 11-го юніту Gateway to Ukraine якраз присвячена Sports and Sportsmen in Ukraine. Звичайно, ми не можемо оминути дійсно відомих українських спортсменів, таких як брати Кличко, Андрій Шевченка, Сергій Бубка або Оксана Баю. Але далі на наступних уроках або в текстах для аудіювання, або в текстах для читання ми знайомимо наших учнів з іншими, більш сучасними спортсменами, які на попередніх Олімпійських іграх 21-го року і зараз вже на нинішніх різного рівня спортивних змаганнях виборюють перші місця, виборюють другі, треті місця, їх знає весь світ, і ми таким чином показуємо нашим учням-підліткам, наскільки курс, з яким вони працюють, курс англійської мови, максимально наближений до сучасності. Так, ми бачимо тут, що це літні Олімпійські ігри 21-го року, де йдеться про Жана Беленюка, Анастасію Четверікову, Ярославу Магучих, Анжеліку Терлюгу, Еліну Світоліну. Далі, коли ми відкриваємо робочий зошит того ж рівня, ми знаходимо тексти про Ольгу Харлан, Василя Ломаченка, Михайла Романчука, Дар'ю Біладід і так далі. Наступне – поєднання нетрадиційне взагалі, свято, яке наближається, і воно буде вже післязавтра, і яке святкують абсолютно всі вчителі і всі учні, але чомусь ми про нього ніколи не говоримо, коли обговорюємо тематику свята, традиції в Україні. Це свято 1 вересня, і ось якраз в 2-му рівні урок Developing Speaking і в підручнику, і в робочому зошиті торкається і поєднує шкільне життя в Україні і свято, і традиції святкування 1 вересня, і шкільні традиційні свята. Ось такі, наприклад, є завдання. Listen to a girl describing the day of knowledge at her school, put the events in the correct order. А потім завдання think about a special day at your school, complete the table with notes, and then, of course, talk about this special day. Ще одна тема з нашої програми – це українські вчені та винахідники. І знов-таки, коли ми вимовляємо це, у нас одразу на думку стереотипно, це не добре, не погано, це просто стереотипно дійсно відомі постаті з минулого. Це Фатон, це Антонов, це Амосов, це дійсно великі постаті в нашій історії, в нашій культурі, але це люди з минулого, і цим не можна ні в якому разі обмежуватися, адже на сьогоднішній день я була приємно здивована тим, скільки у нас дійсно талановитих вчених і винахідників сьогодення 21 століття. І ось цей текст, наприклад, він спочатку, звісно, в такій органічній манері він згадує, а формат цієї реалізації цієї теми – це допис про відвідування Museum of Interesting Science in Odessa. Якщо тут є одесити, ви знаєте, що у нас є такий музей в місті Одеса. І, звичайно, тут є згадування про великих і величних постатей в нашій історії. Це і Олег Антонов, і Борис Патон, і Микола Амосов. Але далі останній абзац цього тексту, він говорить про те, що в IT-сфері наші українські молоді люди, вони також винайшли дуже багато корисних і сучасних речей. Наприклад, студент Львівської політехніки створив додаток, застосунок мобільний для вивчення історії України. Не знаю, чи знали ви про це раніше чи ні. Я чесно зізнаюся, до того, як я прочитала це у даному тексті, я не знала про те, що існує такий мобільний застосунок. Я спеціально поставила ось ці три дуже відомі логотипи PayPal, WhatsApp і Grammarly, і винахідниками цих трьох застосунків програмних забезпечень є також наші українські громадяни. І формат презентації такої теми, зверніть увагу, A Special Tour of Ukraine, коли пропонується науково-винахідницький тур Україною. В перший день туру у нас присвячений тим вченим і винахідникам, які походять з Києва, в другий день з Одеси, і далі учням третє завдання пропонується Design a day tree of this tour, use the internet to find famous scientists or inventors from a different Ukrainian cities and use the words from the previous activity. Коли ми говоримо про захист навколишнього середовища і екологію, у нашої країни є своя болюча сторінка цієї історії, це Чорнобиль. У нас з'явилася нова, вкрай болюча сторінка, це Каховська ГЕС, але про це пишуть і знають усі. А ось про те, яким чином молодь може вплинути на збереження і захист навколишнього середовища, мало хто пише і передбачається, що вони самі можуть подати ідеї. Але ось тут, в 4-му рівні даного курсу, вони спочатку слухають. Формат тут такий: відомий британський модельєр приїхав на Ukraine Fashion Week і поділився eco-friendly ideas for clothes. Тобто тут тема одяг, мода переплетена і пов'язана дуже органічно з темою екології і збереження довкілля. А в робочому зошиті пропонуються для прослуховування, для інформації, для обговорення ті події, в яких беруть участь українські підлітки і студенти за кордоном в різних країнах світу, коли вони виходять на якісь акції із захисту навколишнього середовища. І нарешті останнє такий блок, який пов'язаний з українознавчим компонентом нашої програми – музика, література, кіно. І знов-таки, якщо ми чесно пригадаємо, то ми зізнаємося собі, що знову йдеться про якісь традиційні речі із дещо стереотипні речі. Зазвичай, коли ми говоримо про музику в Україні, ми говоримо переважно, ми можемо знайти в підручниках, посібниках інформацію, тексти, завдання про виконавців минулого. Якщо це література, звичайно, у нас є чудова літературна спадщина, яку учні вивчають на уроках української літератури. І на уроках англійської мови чомусь не згадується сучасна українська література саме для підлітків. І так само йдеться і про кінематограф. Ми зазвичай говоримо про зарубіжні фільми, або про ті фільми, які все ж таки створювалися не за часів незалежної України, а це фільми з минулого. Це не добре, не погано, це просто факт. Яким чином цю тему вирішив автор у даному курсі? 3-й рівень, і тут все взаємопов'язано, тобто тут і музика, і література, і кінематограф. І ось, наприклад, Ukraine Music Quiz. І ми тут бачимо сучасних наших виконавців, сучасні музичні групи і сучасні явища в музичному житті України. Далі, наприклад, це взагалі новина 22-го року. Я не знаю, чи ви слідкуєте і чи ви є фанатами або прихильниками Еда Ширана і гурту «Антитіла», але саме в 2022 році у Варшаві Ед Ширан і гурт «Антитіла» в особі Тараса Тополі заспівали пісню, яку вже другий рік ми слухаємо і знаємо, «Two Step». Якщо ми говоримо про літературу, так, звичайно, наші учні мають знати класику української літератури, але також вони мають знати і сучасних українських авторів. А це, наприклад, Любко Дереш, який є дуже відомим підлітком. Ну, вже він трошечки виходить з підліткового віку, але це дуже відомий автор книг про підлітків, для підлітків, і він є дуже популярним серед підлітків. І саме його творчості і присвячений ось такий урок. Або, наприклад, якщо ми говоримо про кінематограф, то його реалізація йде через filming locations in Ukraine, тобто знов іде взаємозв'язок між geographical position, geographical features of Ukraine і музика, і кінематограф, і, наприклад, коли ми дійдемо до уроку Developing Writing, у нас є сучасна наша кінематографічна реалія, це December Tale, і вона слугує зразком для того, щоб учні далі написали статтю у Вікіпедію про якийсь інший український сучасний фільм. А в робочому зошиті цього ж самого рівня йдеться знову про статтю до Вікіпедії, але про відому сучасну музичну групу або музичного виконавця, а зразком слугує, і я думаю, що всі ви зараз впізнали фотографію, бо це, знов-таки, це 22-й рік, травень місяць, це виступ гурта «Калиш» на Євробаченні. Я завершую свою частину, таку перерву. Сподіваюсь, що Девід встиг відпочити. В курсі Gateway to the World це новий курс, який приходить на зміну другому виданні. В ньому, як ви бачите, 6 рівнів. І перед тим, як я знов передам слово Девіду Спенсеру, я запущу опитування, в якому є лише одне запитання. У нас є можливість познайомити кожного, хто забажає, із даним курсом, де або ми, або наші представники в різних регіонах привеземо і залишимо вам матеріал для ознайомлення, де є і кілька уроків з юніту Gateway to Ukraine. Тому, якщо ви хочете такий матеріал отримати для себе і своїх учнів, просто позначте у опитування, яке зараз запуститься, що так ви хочете. Якщо ні, не проблема, тоді позначте, що ви цього не хочете. Я запустила опитування і почекаю на ваші відповіді, і разом з вами почекаю на повернення Девіда Спенсера.
Hi, was that back to me?
Almost.
Okay, cool.
Let's give 1 or 2 minutes for the participants to take the poll.
No problems.
Where is it possible to see? Dear Tatiana, I know you and I know the school you are from. If you do not object, I will call you tomorrow to answer your question. Mehbara writes that we should know about our talented people, contemporary people, not only from the past, which is also important, but we do have this information when our learners are at history lessons or at literature lessons or at arts lessons, because they do have some information about the history of music. And very seldom we talk about something very contemporary, very up-to-date, which is no older than half a year old. Because this course, Gateway to the World, is really brand new, extremely contemporary in terms of content, not only about Ukraine. And I hope that David will show you some proofs that this course is really extremely up to date, which also, it's my belief that this, I don't know the word in English for this, contemporarity. No, I don't think we do have this word in English. This thing when they have up-to-date content, up-to-date content, it gives additional motivation to our teenage learners. Okay, as I see, teachers are continuing answering the poll. Half a minute if you do not object, and I will go through the chat box to see whether there were some questions, because one of the questions I spotted.
I think somebody asked if it's available now.
It is. Svetlana writes that she's proud to be Ukrainian. Yes, really, when we received this part of Gateway to the World for spelling checking, pronunciation checking, fact checking, I really felt proud of my country. And it is due to you and your team, David, that you help us even more feel this pride to be part of this Ukrainian community. This community now is in different parts of the world, facing different challenges and problems. But for our teenage learners, it is extremely important to feel that they are the part of this absolutely heroic and amazing nation. And when they see it in the course book, I think it helps.
Yeah, definitely.
So I'm stopping the poll. Then I'm stopping sharing. And the floor is yours for the second talk.
Thank you very much. Let me... Okay, everybody can see that, yeah. I was watching Ina's presentation, and I must admit I felt very, very moved. I think it's just incredible. I think it's an amazing section to the book. I think it looks beautiful. I must admit, it started making me think about Ukrainian food, about borscht and vareniki. I remember having some beautiful meals in Kiev. I also saw the name, the Taras Shevchenko University, where I actually gave a talk once. So it brought back great memories. And you know, just echoing Ina's words there, I mean, I feel very, very, very proud that we have been able to do this in Gateway to the World, to have this section Gateway to Ukraine. And I can tell you that it is totally unique. I mean, there is no other book which has a special section for their country. And I think it's a beautiful thing. I think it's been incredibly well written by people, you know, based in Ukraine. And really, I feel very, very moved, actually. And I feel very, very proud that we've managed to do this. And yeah, it means a lot to me also. I have been to Ukraine, as I said before. Obviously, my feelings are definitely with you. And I think it's a great addition to the course. I mean, my aim now, and I'll try and stick to more or less to the time, but my idea today is basically to explain a little bit. I know that Gateway First Edition, Gateway Second Edition have been very popular in Ukraine. So today, in this second session, I just want to explain a few of my aims when I was writing this new edition. And Inna has mentioned that, you know, it's updated. And the reason for doing a new edition is because everything changes. Yeah, life changes. It's changed in some ways that we wouldn't like it to, but life changes, the world changes, and English as a language changes. Can you tell me in the chat box, do you recognize any of these words? They're all new words in English, so some of them might be familiar to you, but others might be completely new. Does anybody know any of these words? Just give me an idea of sort of yes or no. Does it? Not really. Okay, that's a no. Okay, well, that's great. Upcycling, maybe somebody knows. Okay, well, that's great. What I'm going to do now in this talk is show you how Gateway to the World is helping you and your students keep up to date with new developments, even in English as a language and in English vocabulary. So my talk is structured a little bit around this. The first word, I'm going to go back, sorry. The first word is sharenting, sharenting. And sharenting is a mixture of two words, right? You can probably guess, right? So share, and the other word is parent, okay? So sharenting, and it's talking about the new fashion, right? Where parents show photos of their kids, they share photos of their kids on, for example, Facebook or other social media. And sometimes those photos could be embarrassing, right? For the child, for example, the child covered in spaghetti, maybe when they grow up, they feel a little bit embarrassed about that photo, but it's been shared with lots of people online. And the idea of this text is getting students to think about, okay, so parents do this. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? In the text, we discuss the fact that in some countries like France and Italy, it could almost be a criminal offense for a parent to share a photo of their children without their children's agreement. So I think this is an interesting concept, right, for many of our teenage students. Is it okay to share photos? Is it not okay? And one of my first aims when I was writing Gateway to the World was a particular emphasis on critical thinking. So, for example, I'm not sure if I can pronounce your name, Mehvara? Tell me if that's more or less correct. I hope it is. And if not, I apologize. But Mehvara is saying that this is not a good thing. And I think that, you know, we all have an opinion about something like sharing photos on social media. Thank you, Mehvara. So we all have an opinion. Do we think it's good or bad? And what we try and do in Gateway to the World is, first of all, have interesting texts, which are relevant to teenage students. And also, my aim is very much to get students thinking. I want them to think. 21st century, we need our students to think, and not only to have an opinion, but to be able to justify your opinion. So we can also say, oh, it's great, or oh, it's stupid, but we need to be able to justify our opinion. So in Gateway to the World, after our reading text, we have the critical thinkers box. We have, in your opinion, is sharing a good or bad thing? But then it says, and this question is very important, what makes you say that? Okay, why, what are you basing your opinion on? And so we say use ideas from the text, experiences, other information to justify your opinion. So one of my main aims then was critical thinking, getting students to think about a topic and decide, is it good, bad, is it sensible, is it stupid? But what makes you say that? Why are you, what are you basing your opinion on? And in general, in Gateway to the World, we have a real emphasis on what we call thinking skills. You're asking about whether we can send the video. I'm pretty sure that this is being recorded and you will have access to the recording. And I think you can also have access probably to the slides afterwards on a PDF. Yeah. So thinking skills in general. This was like a really big aim of mine writing the book. Again, 21st century, we need to get students. So many things are happening in the world, some of them good, some of them very, very bad. What we need is to encourage our students to be able to think, to analyze, and to have rational opinions about them. This is a fascinating text or a fascinating spread in the book. Great learners, great thinkers. This appears in every unit of the book, and it's the moment when we really encourage our students to think more deeply about particular topics. In this case, it's controlling the weather. Should we be able to control the weather? So we might immediately think, yes, it's a good idea. In the text here, we explain that in a city in Mexico, there is a very big car factory, and they use special ways of manipulating the weather so that it does not rain on top of the new cars, which could possibly damage them before they are sold in car shops. And this sounds like it's quite good, but of course the repercussion is that in the whole area around, it never rains. And this is affecting farmers and farming. So crops are not growing because of other people controlling the weather. So this is a 21st century topic. We're getting students to think about the question, and we do it with different things which we call visible thinking routines. This one is a good example. Sentence, phrase, word. So they've read this text about controlling the weather. Find one sentence in the text that you think talks about a key concept. Choose one phrase in the text that moved you, interested you, or provoked you. And choose one word in the text that you think was central to the idea or ideas in the text. So this is just a very original type of reading comprehension exercise, but one which encourages our students to think deeper about the topic. And really, we do this in every unit. There are these 2 pages where we do the same thing, encouraging thinking. And this was based on the Harvard Graduate School of Education, Project Zero, visible thinking routines. And when you look again at this text, you might want to either read that book or to look at that website. The website is particularly interesting with very practical ideas. But basically what I've done in Gateway to the World is to incorporate, to integrate these thinking routines into this great learners, great thinkers section, which appears in each unit of the book. Here's another example. Here's another different routine. Think, puzzle, explore. I insist again, these routines are actually just very good comprehension exercises, which you could use with any text, any video, any listening. So think, puzzle, explore. Imagine that you're going to read a text in your book. What do you think you know about the topic of the text? What questions or puzzles do you have about the topic? And then how could you explore more? You can explore a text. If you don't find all the information you want, you could explore the internet. So in other words, encouraging students to really get their hands on the text, to really work out, not just to practice this, to practice their English, but also to think more about the world we live in. In this case, this was an exercise before a text about ethical shopping. And ethical shopping is when you buy things from the source, you know where it came from, you know who made it, you know whether the conditions of the workers was good or not, you know which country it's coming from, what situation the country is in. And this connects with one of the words that I had at the beginning of my session, which was upcycling. Upcycling is better than recycling. Recycling, you use it again, maybe for the same purpose, or you make it into a lesser product. But upcycling is taking an old product and making it into something better. And this is just a good way, again, of sustainable development. I noticed Ina was explaining in the Gateway to Ukraine section in the fashion unit, talking about environmentally friendly fashion. So this is connected with that topic. So getting students to think about these topics and to think about them more deeply. Before I go any further, I just want to explain that this section of great learners or great thinkers, I think there are three main ways that you can use it. One is that you see it, you think, yes, I love this. I'm just going to do it now in the middle of the unit because it's perfect for my students. You might also decide that you like it, but you don't think it's totally relevant for your students, in which case you might decide to change it, to modify it. That's perfect. That means you're making it even more relevant for your students. And I hope this doesn't happen, but you might decide that you don't want to do it. Now, if you don't want to do it, that is not a big problem. That's because on these pages, we do not teach new grammar or new vocabulary. There is nothing new in terms of language on these pages. So if you decide to leave it out, it doesn't really matter. It won't affect your language syllabus. And on the other hand, maybe you have pressures of time and you're going a bit slow going through the unit. What you could do is leave it and do it later, because it's not necessary to do it page after page after page. You could decide to put it back to a later stage. So in other words, when I wrote these pages, I made them as useful as possible, but if you decide that you want some flexibility with the unit of your book, you can always decide to do them later or even not to do them at all. So I hope that's clear. There is a certain amount of flexibility which I designed on purpose. Now, of course, you might be thinking skills are great. That sounds interesting, but like I'm an English teacher, right? And I want to teach some English. Can I ask you in the chat box, when you're trying to decide what new book to use with your students, what are the most important things that you look for in any book? What is it that you particularly want to find in a good book? What helps you to decide the book that you're going to use with your students this year? Can you just give me some ideas in the chat box? What things inspire you to choose one book instead of another book? Right, interesting text, up to date, structure and information, mood, interesting, bright pictures, yeah, content. Variety, somebody said, yeah. Interesting interesting tasks and practical content. Right, well, I would agree. And definitely, I'm going to talk about, obviously, interesting text, which is maybe my main aim when I write my books. Somebody said modern vocabulary, which I hope you're going to see is what I'm also doing in Gateway to the World. Somebody said straight away, I think practical. And for me, a word that is always very important when I choose what book I'm going to use is the word clear. I want it to be clear. I want it to be, I open the book and I know what I'm doing. So the idea of clear, systematic. And I think that grammar and vocabulary, sometimes today people don't talk about grammar and vocabulary, but they are the bones, right, of any language. We need grammar and vocabulary to construct the rest. I think the only important thing to remember about grammar and vocabulary is that they are not the ultimate goal. So we're not teaching our students grammar so that they know the grammar. We're teaching grammar so that our students can use the language in communicative situations. I love this quotation. This is from some time back by a very famous grammar expert, Michael Swan. And he was talking about one of his learners. He can recite long lists of irregular verbs, but he can't ask for a cup of coffee. I loved French and Spanish when I was at school, and I went to university to study French and Spanish, and now I am fluent in both languages. But when I was at school, I was not fluent because I could recite long lists of irregular verbs, but I couldn't use the grammar. So it's always useful to remember that we're teaching our students the grammar so that they can use it. For example, drink, drank, drunk, or swim, swam, swum. Have you ever heard an English person say those three words one after the other? Have you ever heard an English person who said eat, ate, eaten? Nobody says this except English teachers, okay? So it's useful to remember that that's not real English. It might help some of our students to remember the grammar, but basically we need to get our students using the language, using the grammar. What we want is for the students to use English. We want them to use it, not to lose it. And that's what we try and do in Gateway to the World. The same really actually as Gateway First Edition and Gateway Second Edition. We have a similar kind of presentation where the language is contextualized and we get students to work it out for themselves. Then we have exercises which are very controlled. Exercise number 2, you can see all you have to do is to choose the correct alternative. So it's quite passive. You're identifying the correct form. And then you will see in any spread, we always go step by step by step, going from very controlled and quite passive to more active and freer. And at the end, the last activity on grammar pages and vocabulary pages is use it, don't lose it. So getting the students to start using the language in situations that are more realistic and related to their daily lives. So this for me is a real aim to get the students to use the new language actively. One thing that has always been special about Gateway is that in many books, the grammar reference section is at the end of the book. And I always joke that my students often only realize that it's at the end of the book when they finish the book. In Gateway and Gateway to the World, at the end of each unit, we have this really useful grammar reference section with the grammar and the vocabulary that they need to know from this unit. And on the other side, practice activities, very similar to English Grammar in Use by Raymond Murphy, because it's just a very simple way to check the grammar and the vocabulary at the end of the unit. Marina, that is a very difficult question. How long does it take to write a textbook? It's a very difficult question to answer. I will have to tell you another day because it takes too long to answer. But yes, it takes a long time. It also takes as we say in English, blood, sweat, and tears. A lot of tears sometimes. Okay, one slight difference with Gateway to the World and the second edition of Gateway is that we have many more text-based vocabulary and grammar exercises. So it's very useful to have sentence-based activities, but it's also nice to have text-based where we have more of a context. And there are two advantages. We have a context, a real context for the grammar and vocabulary, and we can also give texts which are interesting and which are useful for them. So here, for example, we are practicing the definite article, the indefinite article, and when we use no article. And at the same time, we're giving an interesting little text about how the fact that disagreements with your parents when you're a teenager are natural, we shouldn't worry about them, and that we just have to work together to solve our problems. So we're trying to send positive messages at the same time as we're practicing our grammar. This is an interesting text about sports people. They are rivals, but they're also friends. That's an interesting message, I think, for teenagers. Maybe some of my teenage students start playing football and get very, very tense and very angry. It's good to decide then that there are other ways of looking at sport, that you can be rivals, but you can also be friends. Here we're talking about social media, how social media sometimes makes teenagers unhappy and what we can do about it. And finally, there's a nice little text here about people who started leaving positive messages in public places to make people feel better. So I make no apologies for including many texts in my book which are designed to make teenagers feel better about themselves. I think it's an important part of our books that we're learning English, but we're also trying to stress the positivity of things that can happen between our teenage students. So text-based activities, we have much more text-based activities than we did in Gateway second edition. We also have attention to diversity, inclusion, and mixed abilities. And I'm not going to talk about that because I think you remember my first session today where I talked about reach higher activities for fast finishers, about varied texts, and also about flipped classroom videos, which can help to give attention to these questions in the classroom. We also have this section where one of my real aims was to help students to collaborate and work together around the world, in fact, which is why the book is called Gateway to the World. And I've already mentioned some of these things before: collaboration, intercultural competence. Intercultural competence is something that teachers are going to talk about more and more in the future, where we help students from different backgrounds to work together constructively and positively. And it's something that the world certainly needs today. This is revision for you. Do you remember, if you were in my first session, what were the 3 words? Do you remember? I told you that I really like this quotation. Can anybody remember what they were? Celebrate. Thank you, Oksana. You remember that. And that was the most difficult word. So, Oksana, you have definitely been paying attention. Thank you, Sophia. Recognize, accept, and celebrate. Perfect. Now, how do we do this in the book? Well, we do it with these collaborative projects, which I mentioned before. Yeah. Collaborative projects and the virtual classroom exchange, which I haven't explained so far and which I think is really, really important and that you're going to like. We have these projects which are connected to texts in the unit. So, for example, the question of school food. School food in your country. So this is a fascinating topic. Last week, I was giving talks in 2 different countries, Jordan and Poland. And of course, school food in Jordan and Poland is quite different in each different country. So the students are thinking about these different topics We give them a very structured approach to project work. I'm not going to explain everything now because you can look at it when you see the book or when you see examples from the book, but we relate it to the text in the unit. The students have elements of choice. They can decide whether to create a poster, a video message, a presentation, or an information leaflet. They can decide particularly which areas to look at in more detail. And as I explained in my first session, we work on digital skills, academic skills, collaboration, and intercultural awareness. So we develop these skills systematically from one project to another. And then the really exciting part is what we call the virtual classroom exchange. Now, in some international webinars, I've explained this before, but I'm going to explain it to you now so that it's very clear to you. You can simply, by going to macmillanenglish.com, you can simply go to the virtual classroom exchange page, which is run in collaboration with a company called Empatico, and you can register your class for this unique tool. You will say where you are in the world, so where you are teaching from. So this is also nice to unite students maybe who've had to leave Ukraine. But you would register your school in Ukraine or wherever in the world you are. You would say the level of your students, and you would also say the age of your students. Now, on the website, it will give you a video to help you to be able to do the enrollment. But basically, what will happen is that you will automatically be put in touch with a school in a different part of the world, where the students are a similar age and a similar level. And then you will be put in touch with the teacher of that class, and you will be able to contact them, to negotiate, to decide together when you want to get together and what you would like to talk about. Now, I think that this is particularly powerful for teachers in Ukraine, where you've got that possibility of linking with a completely different part of the world, being able to have that, to be able to cross borders, if you like. Now, the feedback that we've had from both teachers and from students has been incredible. Teachers and students realize that their teenage students are actually very similar around the world. They have similar interests. There will be differences, of course, but really, I think they will just enjoy being in touch with teenagers from a completely different part of the world. Imagine if your Ukraine students are in touch with teenagers in Spain, for example. You can talk about the Gateway to the World project. If you decide, you can talk about anything else that you would like to, okay? So as soon as you are in touch with this other teacher, really, you're very, very free to do what you like. So I think really try and take advantage of that. I'm sure the Macmillan Ukraine team will also be able to help you with registration if necessary, if you have any problems. And there is also a help desk within macmillanenglish.com. They will also be able to help you to do this. The great thing about it, of course, is, as I always say, your students will realize that English is not just a school subject. When your students connect with a class in Italy or in Turkey, the only language that they can use to do this is English, right? Unless your students all know Turkish or Spanish or Italian, the only way that students will be able to communicate is with English. English will become a real lingua franca. English will become a really powerful tool where students realize that it is helping them to make contact with people from around the world. So please do take advantage of that tool. It's obviously completely free for users of Gateway to the World. I mentioned earlier in my talk, my first talk, social and emotional learning. In Gateway to the World, we also pay clear, systematic attention to social and emotional learning. I've given talks about social and emotional learning internationally. There are webinars which you can watch. But basically, the idea of social and emotional learning is that by identifying your own emotions, you can learn to express and control your emotions and to express yourself more clearly. Also, it means you can understand other people better. You can identify their emotions, and that means that you can interact with people better. As I say, I have a complete webinar on this topic on the Macmillan YouTube channel, if you want to learn more about it. What we do in Gateway to the World is on these pages, which I've explained before, the great learners and great thinkers, we have certain tools that we help our students to learn so that they can deal with problems in life better. So, for example, and I think this is particularly relevant to your students at the beginning of the year, setting goals, right? So we explain why setting goals in life can be a good thing, not just for our students, to be honest, but for ourselves too, right? It's good for me to try and set myself goals in life, and I'm sure for you too. Why? Well, number one, it develops focus. You have more direction. Number two, it gives you more confidence. You feel like happy that you know what you're doing. It helps you to work harder because when you know what you want, it's easier to work towards that goal. And it also teaches you responsibility because achieving your goal depends on your own self and your own effort and actions. So we have this idea of setting goals. And the real activity, the one that I really like, is the next activity that students do, which is called compass points. And again, I'm going to stress this is not just for our students, but it's actually useful for you in your own life, okay? Compass points, it's called compass points because we have north, south, east, west, NSWE. So this is a great exercise, and I encourage you to try this with your students in the next few weeks when you begin your new lessons, your new academic year. Think about how you can improve your English this year. So this is a question for your students. How can you improve your English this year? Set goals using the compass points. So that means E, excitement. So what excites you about your English classes this year? Okay, so what excites you? W, what worries you? And this is again the social and emotional learning. It's good for students to recognize that they have worries, they have preoccupations. What is it that is worrying them? Because maybe we can help them directly with their problem. N is for needs. What do you need to know? So you're starting English this year. What do you need to know about the classes? What do you need to know about the way that we're going to work? And S is for steps. What is your next step to achieve your goal? So I think this is a great way of breaking down any problem in life. What are you excited about? What are you worried about? What do you need to know to be able to face this situation? And what steps can you take? Alexandra, thank you so much. That is a beautiful comment there. Thank you very much. I'm really excited. Thanks for all the nice comments, by the way. I have read lots of nice comments and I haven't stopped my talk, but I must say you're making me feel very, very good. So thank you very much. Okay, compass points. Just a few more points. I'm not going to carry on speaking for too much longer. I know we're all busy. I'm going to try and finish a little bit later than scheduled, but not too late, okay? If you get the chance to see Gateway to the World, you will also find then that at the back of the book, we have 2 pages where we explain all of our objectives to create great learners. And the idea of Gateway has always been to reach high, to aspire to the top, okay? So we can work as best as we can and make as much progress as we can. Right. We've talked about this already, real-world documentary videos. We saw that beautiful video about that young lady who decided to work as a fisher on a lobster boat. In each unit of Gateway, we have one of these videos. They're all brand new. They're all more or less, many of them are from the BBC, and they're all really nicely produced so that they really get students thinking about the topic. Yeah, so you remember my video from my last session. And then another area that I was really trying to aim for in Gateway to the World is to present a very secure strategy, if you like, a scaffold to help our students. I am still in the classroom next week. No, in fact, on Friday, I'm going to begin classes again. I'm still in the classroom, and I know how important it is that things are guided and helping the students as much as possible. So very quickly, just to explain, writing, if you know Gateway, you'll know that Gateway takes a very structured approach to writing. We get the students to think about the topic, to think about the task, to look at an example, to analyze the example, and only then we get the students to actually write their essay. So we take a very, very structured approach so that the students feel confident that they can write a good essay. We also have at the back of the student's book in Gateway to the World, we have this writing checklist, which gives 10 points that the students can look at to look at their own work and to see if it's up to the right level. I always say that writing, when we ask students to write an essay, writing is only one part of the procedure. Maybe the most important part of the procedure is checking their writing and improving it. When I write a book, I never write it correctly the first time. I have to change it twice, 3 times, 4 times to make it perfect. We also have a very guided approach to writing in the workbook. The workbook for Gateway to the World is new and very complete. And we also take a very structured approach to exam training. This will help with external exams, for example, Cambridge exams, or any other exams that your students are going to do. So first of all, we explain what appears in the exam. Secondly, we explain how the exam is assessed. Then we give strategies to be able to do it well. And then we get the students to practice. That's an interesting question from Medina. Are there any topics you will never include in your textbooks? Yes, there are. Yes, there are. There are certain topics that we are not allowed to talk about in textbooks. But yes, there are certain questions that we can never talk about. But to be honest, you can write a very, very interesting book without talking about certain controversial topics. Obviously, one of those is religion, right? So I've just come back from Jordan, where obviously completely different religion. Politics as well is something that we don't talk about directly. Maybe we talk about politics indirectly, but not directly. And religion, things like that, we don't talk about. Okay, I'm going to go back to the start of my talk with those interesting words that we saw, and I'm going to explain them all, because my aim, and when I asked what you want to see in a book, the most common thing that you all said was interesting texts. And what we try and do here is explain these words that we began to talk about at the start of the session. Sharenting, I've already explained the word, right? When a parent shares photos of their children. Next one was flexitarianism, and somebody said that they knew what flexitarianism is. To be a flexitarian means that you will eat meat, but you will eat less meat. You'll be flexible, so you will eat it sometimes, but you won't eat much. And that's to help with global warming, because you probably know in Brazil, for example, many areas of Brazil are being cut down, the trees, so that they can produce more land for more cows, more cattle, to produce more meat. So the idea is that maybe by being flexible and eating less meat, you could save the planet. And I also explained two new words. So we had reductarianism and climatarianism. And these are two new ways of looking at the food we eat, thinking not just about the food, but how it can help the planet. There are some interesting questions again. I'm getting diverted by your interesting questions. Favorite topic or topics? I don't think I have one, but I can tell you for me, the part that I feel proudest of with Gateway is writing interesting topics. And I think the key is variety. So I don't have like one favorite topic, although I suppose I do like writing about art and literature and music because I love art and literature and music. But yeah, I think variety is the most important thing. Plogging was another word on my list, okay? Maybe people didn't know what the word plogging is, but maybe you've seen it. Plogging is when people go jogging, but they take a rubbish bin and they use it to clean up the area that they are running in. So they're doing two things at the same time. They are getting exercise, but they are also helping the area that they live in. You'll notice that we ask a critical thinkers question about this, because is it a good idea? Is it a bad idea? What else can we do? Little things, what other little things can we do to help the environment? Another word was upcycling, and I think I've explained this. Upcycling is not just recycling, it's making an old product better than it was before. And I think the two last words, gastrophysics. This was one of my favorite texts. Somebody asked, what are your favorite topic or topics? Food. I do like food. I confess that I do like food. And if you saw my weight, you would know that I do like food. Gastrophysics is a fascinating subject. In the chat box, tell me, why do you think in some restaurants, the knife and fork are very heavy? What do you think what difference does it make to the way that you think about your food if your knife and fork are heavy? Does anybody have a theory? This is all a science, by the way. People have studied this, not to be stolen. That's a good idea, Lina. So you could use your hands, maybe. Less food? Well, in a restaurant, usually they want you to eat more food. It's actually, it's a bit like a glass, you know. Sometimes, for example, a whiskey glass, I don't usually drink whiskey, by the way, but whiskey glasses are very heavy. And that's because it gives you the idea that the drink is like very important. Yeah, I think that's more like the idea, Sergey, you know, Sergey, that I think the idea is that when it's heavy, you start to think, wow, this is heavy. This meal is going to be good. And it's going to be a serious drink, sorry, a serious meal. And so it makes you think that it's probably going to be a bit more expensive. That might sound silly, but if you think a good meal, does a good meal taste better with plastic fork and knife or with a metal fork and knife? I think most people would agree that it tastes better with metal, right? What do I drink, Irina? You're asking what I drink. I like beer and wine, definitely. Beer and wine I like. So this is an interesting topic then about how psychology affects the way that we eat, what we eat. For example, classical music in a restaurant usually makes us spend more because we think it's more elegant and more pricey. And rock music in a restaurant often makes us shout a lot, and so we get thirsty. So in fast food restaurants with rock music, usually they make us drink more and eat faster. So this is a really interesting topic, I think, the psychology of food and restaurants. And my last word was snacksident. You can see in the top corner, a snacksident. And I finished with my favorite word. A snacksident is a mixture of two words, right? Snacksident is a mixture of a snack and an accident. And that means, for example, a snacksident, let's imagine you see a packet of biscuits and you say, okay, I'm just going to have one little biscuit as a snack. And you eat the first biscuit, and then you eat the second biscuit, the third biscuit, the fourth biscuit, and suddenly you have eaten the whole packet. That is a snacksident. Does that ever happen to you? Have you ever had a snacksident in your life before? Yes, Anastasia, yes. I think it's happened to all of us, yeah? It's part of crisps. And in fact, Olya, that happens with crisps more than with biscuits for me. Okay. So yeah, that definitely happens to me. One crisp is never enough. And just to finish my talk, going back to the beginning, English never stops changing. English is the language that never sleeps. And so obviously with Gateway to the World, what I hope I've done is helped you to navigate some of the new changes, some of the new words in English, help your students to be up to date with the English vocabulary that they're learning, also help them to keep up to date with new methodology in English, where we're looking at the flipped classroom, where we're looking at inclusion, diversity, and also thinking about thinking skills. Thank you so much for being with me. One great way to stay in touch with me is by Facebook. By the way, if you have problems with Teach with Dave, sometimes it's easier to put Teach with Dave Gateway or Gateway Teach with Dave. But I would love to stay in touch. And I think, Ina, I think that in fact, Ukraine is the first or the second biggest country in the world which follows me on that Facebook page. So if we could if you could all join me there, it would be brilliant.
David, thank you very much. In the very end of your talk, I would like to take one more minute of attention to, first of all, thank you for your incredible talks, and a small teaser for the participants. By the end of my 1 minute talk, can you please stop sharing the screen so that I can share my screen?
Sure.
I will inform the participants that we prepared one more gift for them.
Oh, wow. Great.
I'm learning from you, from the best, the teaser, so that the participants stay. I would like to refer our teachers to our website. First of all, you can have a look at and have a taste of Gateway to the World from our online catalog. Here you can find the plans and the approvals from the ministry and lots of video resources. One more thing, I would like to remind you that you can use our online tests, and the teaser revealed the participants will receive a gift of some test which is not here, and you will learn what test you can receive from the phone call from me or from my colleagues within the week. That's it.
Wow.
Yeah. We prepared, we were looking forward to your course, Gateway to the World. I must confess that Gateway to the World is love from first sight for me.
Thank you.
I'm really in love with this course, with all the features. As you know, maybe the participants don't know, but as you know, I am the user of all Gateway editions, starting with the very first one. And every time when I hear about the new version, I think for myself, it is impossible to make it better. And then you do it.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Thank all the participants. The last reminder that you will receive the certificate and you will receive the link to the recording of both sessions. Have a good start of your school year and see you later, maybe in person, maybe in Ukraine when it is safe.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Thanks to everybody who's been following the session all afternoon. It's been an honor, as always. And I'm here when you need me.